Welcome back. This is my Djinn and Summon Hunt video. If you are watching my video 15, Mars Lighthouse, then you should be appearing here around midway through. There is a point where you achieve the teleport synergy, which I should just have gotten, which I will now use to take me to an earlier point in the game. Thanks to this synergy, I can find a few more of the optional bosses and the optional summons, as well as travel around the world a lot more quickly. It's a little bit funny that they only give you this ability in the final dungeon, but it does make a little bit of sense. As part of my final skim around the world, I am now going to find all the Djinn I didn't find during general play. I do apologize, there might be a few of the Djinn that I found during my grinding, but that shouldn't have been the case. Every Djinn I found should be available on all my previous videos, and any subsequent Djinn I find in this video should help you find the remaining Djinn for the final summon, which is, if I'm not mistaken, Lilith? Or Iris. Iris is her name. This is the Contigo teleport pad. You use this to get into the Anemo Sanctum. Once you find all the subsequent Djinn, you come here. It lights it up like this. Now I know I'm missing 2 of those Djinn, 3 of these Djinn, 2 of these Djinn, and 2 of these ones. Once you find all of them, it opens up that panel in the back. You unlock the, I think it's the Azul summon. Then there's a second smaller door behind that one, which leads into the final dungeon, where you fight Dullahan. Dullahan gives you Iris. Iris is the strongest summon in the game, does a massive amount of damage, heals and revives all your party members, including the back ones, and just looks top-notch. But we won't get to that one yet. We've got 3 optional bosses to get before that, and a little bit of side messing around while I figure out how many remaining forgeable items I have. Some rusted iron weapons, some salamander tails, golem cores, that sort of thing, just to max out my equipment before the final boss. I'll be messing around here in Yalom just to get all of that stuff done. I'll try to skip over all of that as much as I can. Alrighty, now I know exactly which Djinn I'm missing. I'm going to go after them one at a time. So when you're around this area, this is the Yampi Desert. It is the area between, I forgot the name, Mazda I think, and the place where you found the pirate ship. Now I'm running away, but there's actually an easy way to get around here. You have the sand synergy. That lets you travel right up that sand waterfall. It is the easiest way to get through all of this nonsense instead of just what I'm about to do, which is teleport up to it. Al-Hafra, that's the place's name. There we go. So if you had ridden up the sand, you would have gotten up to this point here, which would have made it much easier. But thanks to teleport, it's perfectly acceptable just to mess around. I do eventually figure out that I can ride up the place using my sand synergy, because it's actually necessary to use the sand synergy to ride up the place. Silly past Darren, not realizing these very obvious things future Darren has already known. See, there is the section I'm looking for, and I am now aware of where it is. What I'm yet to be aware of is how to get up there. There we go, figured it out. Round of applause for past Darren for giving future Darren the knowledge he needed to be condescending in this moment. So the enemies in these sections are slightly stronger than the enemies in the Mars Lighthouse. This is another thing that a lot of JRPGs have a tendency to do, where they have optional dungeons, optional bosses that are significantly stronger than the final boss of the game. I'm not sure where it started. I think it started with Final Fantasy and their optional bosses. I have mentioned the Dark Aeons in Final Fantasy X and Tiamat, some of the hunt missions in Final Fantasy XII. While I've never beaten Tiamat in Final Fantasy XII, I have beaten at least 3 of the Dark Aeons in Final Fantasy X. One of those fights I actually won without using Zanmato, which is normally what I'd use to beat the Dark Aeons in Final Fantasy X. Hopefully one day I'll do a video on that. It will be a ton of fun. So this is the first of the optional dungeons. It is technically the weakest. You beat a fire-based optional enemy. According to the development notes, each of these optional enemies is meant to be one of the 4 elements. There was meant to be a earth element enemy that you fight, but that one is replaced by Dullahan, who is for some reason Guardian of Light. Not really earth, not really wind, but there as well. Thanks to all the grinding I did before this point, most of these enemies are still pretty worthless to me. It only really gets useful once I reach the... which dungeon was it? The second to last dungeon, where I fight the Sentinel. He is the Mars, or the fire optional enemy. He's the Jupiter optional enemy, yes, the wind one. Which is still pretty weird because he's a giant knight in a suit of armor. Not super sure how that relates to wind, but sure. This one is much more straightforward. He's fire, he's like a big demon dude. The water one, I think, is a mage, he's like a wizard. And then again, instead of earth, we have Dullahan, who's a guardian of light. If you haven't done enough grinding before getting to these optional bosses, or if you didn't want to do the grinding, I suppose, before these optional bosses, then it is always an option to run from these fights. It's not recommended. The more of them you fight, the stronger you will get. And as I have expressed before, games with random encounters are designed so that if you fight the random encounters, you will be leveled enough to fight the general bosses of the game. But if you don't give yourself that opportunity, then you will miss out on just getting through the game normally. Case in point, when I played Final Fantasy XII, and I ran from as many fights as I could, and I got my butt handed to me by the King Bomb and his 2 bomb friends. Eventually I did get the gist of it. I got more into RPGs, and through a bit of determination I started learning how to enjoy grinding, and I got much better at it. To this day I've managed to finish Final Fantasy XII, but again I haven't beaten Tiamat. But frankly, stuff that. That's never going to happen. Especially now that they've nerfed the Zodiac Spear. Another thing to watch out for is there where I used the Cycle Ray or Cycle Beam against this dragon and that little wyvern thing. The wyvern is a wind enemy. Because it is a wind enemy, it is going to take less damage from wind attacks. And because the fire dragon is a fire enemy, it's going to take less damage from fire attacks. As much as I mention this, it is something I tend to forget quite often. And it can mean the difference between these fire enemies wrecking you, if you're underleveled, or one-upping this fire enemy because you hit it with a water attack, like Diamondberg or Super Cool. Instead of hitting it with that Cycle Beam that, while it would be the strongest against other enemies, wouldn't be the strongest against these enemies. looking back at these dungeons versus the final optional dungeon in the first game, it is still really weird how we can have something like this, where it is sort of a lot of the same techniques you had to use in the first game, or throughout the rest of the game, where you have scoop to find the secret Djinn here, pound to get through these sections, use move, use sand as you're supposed to, and it still doesn't feel as well thought out as those dungeons in the first game, where each level was a special concoction from the developers. We had to use a special kind of technique between using the halt synergy, the hide synergy, and the catch synergy to get through the level. There weren't that many of them, but they still sit very strongly in my mind. Losing something like that still hurts. As much as I enjoy these optional dungeons and everything that we get from them, I'll always prefer that one. Except the fact that the final prize in that one is trash. It's a cursed suit of armor that ultimately is really not that useful. I passed a golden code from my first game once, just because I'd played the game finished and I wanted to use my own golden code, so that I could have that armor in the second game. It is weaker than the third strongest armor in this game, which I think was the Valkyrie mail. Not the Valkyrie mail, that golden armor you get in Lemuria's fountain. It's weaker than that. The supposedly strongest armor in that game is weaker than that, the third strongest in this game. Funny to me, because of how much effort I had to go through to get it. I mean, yeah, I'm digging basically trash out of the ground, and it can give me 3 different sets of armor that would all be better than that particular set of armor. But I suppose that shows good game development. You want the sequel of a game to be better than the first one, to be more. And it's good. Alright, here we go. So we're going to save over my save file here. I'm going to take on this fool, make sure all my Djinn are set appropriately. Don't forget, Mia does have access to healing synergy, so don't waste your main character's healing synergy before a fight like this, so that your main characters can carry the fight. The other option, as I'm about to use here, is using your secondary team for your summons. Have them spam all the summons, die, then they'll automatically swap out with your backup team, or your main team, and your main team can carry the fight from there. To combat this, a lot of the optional bosses have Djinn Storm or Djinn Hit, which takes out all your Djinn and puts them all into standby mode. The more Djinn you have, the longer it takes for them to come back to you, since they come back once per turn, and it actually weakens your party by quite a lot. Yep, God in your fire, prove yourself in his flame. Very weird looking dude. Let's hit him with some water attacks. Here comes Eclipse. Oh snap, he used Eclipse against me. What a jerk. Oh cool, I still had enough left for 1 judgment. And now I'm dead. But as planned, here's my primary team back in the ring. Nope, you paralyzed Jenna. So while normally I would give a rundown of their attacks, this is one of the enemies whose attack patterns I remember the least. I honestly forgot he existed for a while. I only remember the Sentinel and the Mage because they gave me the most trouble. This dude is actually very straightforward. From the looks of it, he can steal your Djinn and your summons and use them against you, or you can very specifically use Eclipse against you. Either way, he did hit me with my own Eclipse earlier, and that was a bit of a pain. This is one of the main reasons why having a secondary team at the ready is so useful, so that when he hits you with a party-ending attack like that, you don't lose your main party. The other option is just power leveling your secondary characters as well, so that when it comes to situations like this, they're also ready for it. Let's see. He's tanking it hard. And you see, he hit me with my own Megara. So from the looks of it, he consumes your own Djinn to use your own summons against you. There we go. Another thing to remember is make sure you have your backup items, your healing items like the Water of Life and your Mist, your Potion of Mist, set to your heroes that don't have their own primary healing abilities or group healing abilities. Jenna should never be holding a Potion of Mist, but she can hold a Water of Life. Give Sheba both, Water of Life and Potion of Mist. Because she doesn't have any of her own innate healing abilities, it helps to have her ready to heal just in case. She's also the one you should be giving a Spirit Ring to. Spirit Ring is good in a pinch, there it is, and your Psy Crystals as well. She has the most synergy, so she won't run out as quickly. Oh, he's just getting stronger. It's good to prioritize using compatible summons with the heroes that you want them to use, so that you have your Earth heroes gaining Earth bonuses and your Water heroes gaining Water bonuses. Daedalus. I don't know why I keep forgetting this, because Daedalus is one of my favorite summons to use. He has this very cool thing, and you'll see it a bit later, where he fires a bunch of small missiles and one big missile into the sky. Then the small missiles hit immediately, do a small amount of damage, and on the very next turn, the big missile hits, I think it's 2 turns later, and deals a massive amount of damage. It is one of the more damaging summons available in the game, although it does take a bit longer to resolve, and if your unit dies who summoned him, then the giant missile doesn't hit. It just vanishes into the ether, I assume. I guess it's implying that the giant missile is being, what's the word? Controlled by the person who is alive. So as soon as he disappears, the summon disappears with him. So once you've beaten that boss, or lost to that boss, and you can come right back to Al-Afra, you revive your people. Right, that's the other thing. Always use reviving your people before you sleep in an inn. I forget it a lot. The inn will restore you if you're alive. If you're not alive, you won't get any of your synergy points back. On the other hand, if you're dead, you can still use synergy. So, Felix, can use his revive synergy to revive whoever's dead. Then you have them all sleep in the inn. That will pretty much null out any counterintuitive effects that come from using his revive. For this instance, we're just making sure everyone has the necessary Djinn they should have. Whether or not we're the strongest we can be based on what we can do. Ooh. Alrighty, just double checking that the Djinn which Djinn I should be going for next. So a curious thing from the first game, any Djinn that roll over from Isaac's party will take first place when you order the Djinn. It's not ordered alphabetically or anything. So where Echo is your first Djinn for Felix, Flint was the first Djinn for Isaac. So if you give Flint to Felix, Flint will be first before Echo, even though Echo is Felix's first Djinni. Ooh, look at them. These are the guys I was mentioning in one of my previous videos. They're the soldiers you beat in that tournament in the first game. They're kind of upset that you whipped their butts and believe that you cheated, which you most likely did because you probably used synergy to beat them. So just to be fair, I am now basic attacking each of them to death one at a time. While it's not Felix beating them this time, even though Felix totally could have, I am still beating them with a bare hand. I don't know if this is the golden shirt. This is like a vest. Who needs it most? So the best thing about a vest, like the golden shirt, is you can wear it under armor. So if you're wearing armor, you can put on the little vest and it will not take up any slots, your equipment slots. And so I messed up here. That's it. Always use your backup team for overworld synergy, just to save up a bit. And now I can't get over there. This is me just figuring out how all of these stone panels work, so that I know what to do. I'll figure it out. So if you are sick of fighting these weak enemies, you still have access to the avoid synergy, which is very useful against them. Anything that is weaker than you, you won't fight it. That's right. It does run out pretty quickly the longer you run around in this section, so you will have to apply it quite regularly. But that shouldn't be too much of a problem. So the reason you're moving this lift rock into the air is so that when that little Djinni starts running away, he can't run down. Otherwise he'll just keep running around and around and around. In the first game, what you'd do, there we go, now he tries to run, but he can't because the rock is in the way. You'd use the halt synergy. But because he's so far away from you, the halt synergy wouldn't work. That's right. Always try to make it sleep. Best case scenario is it falls asleep and then won't run away while you kill it. It's one step further. Step 2. Ooh. Now we're going to have to run away normally. So we don't need to worry about that anymore, so we can just move it out of the way as normal. Just trying to navigate. Now I'm trying to figure out where to go next. There it is. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Seems the developers have very cleverly made it so that you can only leave the land with your flying ship in very specific points. Not sure why. Once you have the teleport synergy, it becomes completely meaningless anyway. But you can only teleport to places with rest stops and temples. This was a tricky one to find. This whole island layout is a bit iffy. So I had to compare it to my distance from the Jupiter lighthouse and my distance from Contigo. It becomes a question of, do you enter from the left, or do you have to go to Contigo first and then come here? There it is. Hit it with sleep, hit it with that water attack. It was a nice big odyssey. Onward and upward. So there are two Djinni that are only available in the optional dungeon themselves, but we'll get to them. The one is with the treasure island, the other one is with, I think it's Shaman Village's secret tunnels actually. Not the secret tunnels you use to get into the town, but the one on their trial road. I needed the lift synergy to get through it, but I also needed the teleport synergy, which I only got now. Always forget about this place. That's it. And he learns growth. And liquefier. Now I'm contemplating my life choices. And thanks to the magic of synergy, I find Tinder. So set Tinder, give Crystal back to other idiot when you can, Isaac, so that he can have all the Earth Djinn to himself again. Remember to rob this kindly couple who live on a rock in the middle of nowhere, because what are they going to do with the gold anyway? Doubling up on my recon. I hope you took my advice and actually put on a podcast or some music while you're listening to this. Just on the off chance I go silent or stop moving around for extended periods of time. It's important to remember that when I'm recording video for things like this, I have a tendency to slow down a bit to check my notes so I can make sure where the Djinn is that I'm going to next compared to the Djinn that I already have. I do that a lot here, and it does give you a bit of time to reflect, double check your notes, and see which Djinn you have in case you're following at home. If you are checking your notes, remember not to go after the Djinn that are with those secret people, the optional bosses, unless you're prepared to face the optional boss. You don't want to waste that, how can I say, you don't want to waste that opportunity you took to go fight the boss. Fight the boss when you're there, save yourself some time. The dungeons can be a bit tedious if you've done them a couple of times already. Especially this one. Another thing I enjoyed more in the first game than in this game is the trials. Fighting those Centurion dudes in, I can't remember the place's name, Babadi's place, is about 10 times more fun than doing Trial Road. You get to place your people in strategic positions. If you exploit the synergy they have well enough, you can actually make it much easier for yourself. What I would do is I'd give Garrett the Frost Jewel so that he could freeze stuff when I needed him to. That way I had 2 people freezing stuff, and that always helped me out. Oh no, it's a mad plant. Whatever will I do? Wow, an elixir. So useful. And here we go. So you just use reveal here, and you hop over and hit it in the face. Then you hit it in the face with your sword. So annoying. Luckily, they do add little ways to get out of here much quicker. Much more quickly. Alright, with those trials out of the way, we move on to the next section. Get more Djinni. Beat up some more unassuming people. That's the other one. Turtle Island. It's Turtle Island. Turtle Island and Treasure Island. There have the two optional dungeons. It is not, in fact, Shaman Road. Which it should have been. I feel like they could have hidden an optional dungeon in these mountains instead of having two of them on secret islands. Having the Sentinel be the guardian of the Shaman's village in secret actually seems like a fun idea. Just remember, there's the whole convoluted system that you have to go through before you can actually get to the turtle village. You have to find the nice kerchief, the pretty stone, by helping those penguins. Then you give the pretty stone to the bird. The bird gives you the kerchief. You give the kerchief to the cow. The cow gives you milk. Give the milk to the puppy. The puppy gives you a little turtle. You give the little turtle to this big turtle. The big turtle takes you here. Alright, so I'm level 40 before I go in. This will be important later. This is not a dungeon. This is a corridor full of enemies. There are some of the strongest enemies in the game, but they're the best for grinding. That bird right there, if you can find two of them in one go, what you do is you keep wailing on the one, and then his friend revives him, just like that. And they each give you like 9k experience. You'll see in a bit, I bump myself up like 12 levels in this one dungeon, or corridor, as I mentioned earlier. If it does show up with a cruel dragon like this, kill the bird first. The cruel dragon can take a lot of damage, and it deals a lot of damage. It's a pain in the butt to fight over and over again. There we go. Kill the bird a second time. Don't worry about healing yourself, unless you're yellow. Woof. Pair of tough jerks, aren't you? Yes, the one he just revived ran away. Make sure you revive your people appropriately. If they aren't alive by the end of the battle, they do not gain experience. I learned this the hard way. You don't want to. As you can see here, I have learned from my earlier mistake, and I'm killing the bird first. Something I don't actually show you. I went to Yalam and I got all that equipment I was talking about earlier. The attack that Pretty Boy is currently using, Acheron's Grasp, is a cursed blade that you make out of dark matter. It is technically the strongest weapon in the game because it gives you 210 extra attack points, but the soul blade is still the best because its howl attacks almost every turn and deals more damage than most high level synergy. Remember that tremor bit we collected much earlier in the game? Still super useful. Here we go. So that's one Djinn left. The remaining Mars Djinn. Don't forget, try not to use fire attacks on these birds on account of their being firebirds. Because they're based on the Phoenix enemy, they take reduced damage from fire attacks. Oof. Chimera worm. So I do spend a little bit of time grinding it up in this corridor. I don't know if I show you my results before I go in to fight the Sentinel, but I should. You should notice a fiddly looking cut not too far from now. As you can see, the corridors also get darker and darker. Exactly why? Can't say. Maybe they become more well lit the deeper in you go. Who else do I fight that? Ooh, Searing Beam. That's a new one. Oh, let's try that again. Make sure all my people are set up so they can use their summons appropriately. There's Daedalus. Let's hit him with 2 of these. Hopefully one of them will survive. So the only problem with Daedalus is you kind of have to survive for the big missile to hit, or it's a waste of the summon. $530 damage sounds like a lot. It does give a high defense boost there. Already reduced the attack power of my summon by 400 points. Let's hope he survives this one. And there goes Aloft. Thankfully he wasn't the one summoning Daedalus, so let's hope for the best. Up, he died before he could summon the missile. Haven't learned Dragon Fume yet. Oh no. He's completely immune to synergy. So that's something to watch out for. The Sentinel is completely immune to synergy. You're going to have to beat on him with your basic attacks. This does not stop him from being immune to synergy. That trident thing I just used there. Completely worthless. Remember to have your healers focused on healing and your attackers focused on attacking. Now I don't have a healer, so I'm going to have to rely on myself. She has the Spirit Ring. Have her use the Spirit Ring in cases like this, or you're putting yourself in unnecessary risk. I survived there with 2 HP. I shouldn't have been putting myself in that predicament. He gets like 3 attacks a turn. It's not a good idea to risk yourself like that. Don't ask me why the jerk, who's supposed to be a Guardian of Wind, is using Searing Beam, but he's also a cheater. Alright, so the reason you can't stack buffs against him is because he can use one of his 3 turns to use Break. And what Break does is it gets rid of all your buffs, passive or otherwise. Break is a general pain in the butt. There he does it again. And he also uses Armor Crush. Armor Crush gets rid of your defensive capabilities so that he can do more damage to you on his following attacks. Like that. If you have yourself set up properly, like I do, you'll have Felix reviving your dead people every other turn, and if Felix dies, you have someone use the Water of Life on him. It's important to save your Water of Life for the people who have Revive, so they can prioritize using Revive. Other option is to make use of your Djinn. Each of them does have a basic attack that they can boost you with, or attack with. One of the Djinn I think you get from the first game lets you do a joint attack or a double attack. Basically where you attack twice in one turn. I would honestly recommend getting the Soul Blade first before coming after these bosses. Then using that Djinn to have Felix attack twice, use Megiddo on each attack, hopefully, and deal a total of about 900 damage per turn. This will maximize the amount of damage you can actually do to the Sentinel, so he doesn't recover 200 of his damage every turn. You're effectively only taking out about 200 of his health on each attack, because he regenerates 200 points of HP each turn. So if each person in your party does only 100 attack points damage average, then he's not going to be, he's operating on a loss, but not that much of a loss. And that's what you're really worried about. Yep, Break doesn't even work on him, which is a surprising pain in the butt. That's right, you have Miss Potions, genius. So while I am much faster than him, and deliver most of my attacks before he can deliver any of his, that does mean he attacks 3 times in succession before I get my next set of attacks off. And it's not useful to stack your, say, heals. There we go. Dead as doornail. So the game cheats a little bit here. It has the 6 pattern that I'm so fond of, but nothing to reveal. Let's heal all my people. Let's get to grinding. Just like that. "10 levels up in, I'm pretty sure it was an hour. An hour that I subsequently cut away with my magic editing skills. So thanks to that bit of editing, I should now be strong enough to take on our good friend the mage. But first I'm going to return to Prox, going to return to Mars Lighthouse, and then immediately come back here. But what I just did there, during that other awkward cut, was retrieve the Soul Blade and reach the final section of Mars Lighthouse. I tried to come after the mage the first time I came through here, and he mopped the floor with me. He healed himself more often than I could regenerate, than I could deal damage to him, and did more damage to me than I could properly heal. So as you can see here, I'm still technically level 40. This is before I actually went after the Sentinel, this particular bit of the game. The Sentinel is the second boss I went after, not the first. I did that with the magic of editing as well. So again, if you're going after the treasure on the side, you grind the one on the right first, you run over the side there, cross the tightrope, and then come back around this way. We are not going that way. We are going all the way down, using lift on this particular little rock here. Watch. Zoop. Then we're going through this teeny tiny optional dungeon. Oh, what does this do? I'm pretty sure the Lucky Pepper lets me use Megiddo more times. I forget what luck does. Yep, 274 is the weakest. Sorry, Jenna. Oh, cool. His attack will go down, but I'm never going to use him for attacking things anyway. And the award for least effective enemy goes to Gilman Lord for trying to be super cool and still being a terrible enemy. So we don't use lift on that one. We don't use lift on this one. Puppet Warrior. He actually looks pretty cool. You can almost hear the cogs turning in past Darren's brain. Almost got him. This is the firebrand that I was actually using in that other dungeon that unleashes Purgatory. That big fire attack that leaves that attacks with a big circle. Yeah. See? This Hestia blade. It's even stronger than the Titan blade, which is pretty much the strongest sword in the first game. The first game's soul blade, if you will. And let me just say how disappointed I was when I first found the Titan Blade in the first game. It didn't have anything nearly as cool as Megiddo, and I will never forgive the first game for that. Silly first game. Terrible level design. Do you go left or right? If you go left, there's a dead end. If you go right, it leads to the next section. But is the dead end the good kind of dead end, which gives you, you know, all the cool stuff, or is the bad kind of dead end, where you don't get some cool stuff? Like this one, where you go all the way to the end of the dead end, and it's just to tell you, hey, you went the wrong way, time to go back. It doesn't even have the level-headed justification of a random encounter to give you extra experience. It's just terrible. So this is post-grind, post-sentinel. But everything up until this point was pre-sentinel before I got my butt handed to me. Then I ran away screaming, edited out all the interim, and then edited back in so that I'd have catastrophe against this fool. And I can properly mop the floor with him. Boom, giant missile. And just like that, the mage is dead. Poor Aloft doesn't gain any experience, but, you know, I don't care, was the end of that sentence. I was not interested in leveling up Aloft anyway. He is already 10 levels behind me. I don't recommend choosing a gold code with any previous party where their levels are over 50. It doesn't help you much. But try to have them be closer to level 40 than what I had them at. Having them 10 levels weaker than me is just really not useful. Especially when you fight the Doom Dragon, as I said, and having them as your vanguard, or the first party to go out into the fight, can be really useful. Especially in this instance. If they'd all survived, they would have all gotten a bit of experience. But ultimately you just need the people who use Daedalus to survive so that he can hit them with his missile. Now we go to Contigo. I now have all the Djinn, and I can face off against the, well, not actual final boss, the pseudo final boss of this game. I feel like there should be more ceremony in this. Just like that. I like how it says attack the slate, but all we're doing is putting our hand on it and absorbing the letters into our brain. Now for the final optional dungeon. Ooh, this one's tricky. This will be the last easy one. After this, they're all just kind of a pain. Similar concept with that actually. For now, super easy. This is where that staircase would have taken you earlier. Grave white. So this is one of these types of puzzles. We have to light up all the little lights while not falling through the hole. I've already messed it up. Just did a cut there, going to try that again. That's it, you're figuring it out. You can step over the light twice, just not the broken floor. That's it. Yes, I am pretending to be smarter than I was when I was figuring this stuff out. It's part of the benefit of living in the future. Mad demon as strong as ever. So here's something new you can learn. If it can't follow you, it will adjust its position until it can. So what you're meant to do is bump it up against this stone in such a way that you can then feed it into the next space. Now, since it follows you more or less exactly, if you can't go any farther forward, neither can it. So what you're meant to do is actually have it be ahead of you, rather than you ahead of it. something I don't immediately realize. Also something you can't really fix once you're already ahead of it. And drop down a hole it goes. See, it doesn't help until you've already solved the puzzle. Almost got it. I don't really got it. I do have to commend myself. For all the little things I did, solving this puzzle the right way does make me a bit happy. I never looked up any guides or secrets on how to complete these puzzles, just to find the Djinn, because they're a bunch of pains in the butt and nobody tells you where they are. There we go. Yeah, and if I thought that was bad, the next one's going to be so much worse. So now I get this out of the way, as was intended. Move this off to the side a bit and push this one to freedom. Yeah, this one's a bit trippy. There we go. Good job. Now we kill the mad demon again. Forever the pain in the butt. Let's not make a whoopsie of this one. Too late. That's right. First move the stone, then use sand. To disengage sand prematurely, just press the A button. And this is the final puzzle for the final secret boss. A literal puzzle. So once again, we're going to use our very cool summons to try to finish this boss fight as quickly as possible. Whether or not you want to have both sets of your team ready to use all your summons is up to you. I wouldn't recommend it. Karen. Do it. We're going to try that again. This time we're going to have to set up a cut point where I am not a silly goose. So he might die first, so give him one of the weaker summons. Give him Catastrophe. Have your fastest person, in this case, a Loft. Have a Loft use your strongest summon. Ah, what a fool. Remember, Loft is the fastest, he attacks first. So in your second opportunity, have him use all your best summons again, rather than him using your, arguably your worst summons. Oh no, he's using Karen against me. Yeah. Good job, Mana. Last to survive. Hit him with Flora. Up, you're dead. So whatever attack you can actually use against him, from our side at least, Megiddo is going to be stronger. Oof, that sucked. Oh yeah, I loaded him up with lots of Water of Life. Also during my grinding, I found out that a bunch of the enemies in that little tunnel we found earlier actually drop Waters of Life. That was great to learn. I just farmed them for Waters of Life and general farming purposes. Big woof. Don't stop hitting him. If he can regenerate life too, you don't want him to gain more life back than you've been hitting him with. This is going to be tight, but I can do it. Alright, round 2. Yeah, Moloch. Always a trooper. Yes, spam those summons, whoop his butt. And now no one left alive even as revived, jeez. But thankfully with that, I now have access to Iris, who would normally have been able to heal all my people. 9 Mars, 4 Mercury. Nine fire, 4 water. And I can summon her. So in preparation for the end, I will be messing around with these Djinn summons so that I can use them in the end battle. In the meantime, this is one of the 2 strongest summons in the game. This and Karen, I believe. In addition to that, she would successfully revive all my people, deal a bunch of damage. Something I think we can all be thankful for. The damage, not the healing. I can heal myself. Wow, whole party of dead people. Things are not looking good for the Synergy gang. I like that I'm such a high level, but revive me only costs 1,000 gold. So now with all the summons in the bag, all the optional bosses defeated, our final stop is the end. I'm going to take myself all the way back to Prox. Need to get all the way into the Mars Lighthouse. And just before the final teleport rune. Just like all the other optional bosses, to get to this one, you have to use teleport. Get your fancy music ready and your tissues. This is the end.